Oh, balls. Okay. Let me do this again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to the flight sim world. This is Fighter Shark 95, and we're back with another 50 states and 50 streams. And today is part 12 of 50. We're here at the Tar Heel state of North Carolina today. So that's what we're here for today. And today we're here at First Flight Airport. This is right around where the Wrightbirds began modern aviation. So that is where we're at today. I hope you're all doing on here as always. So before we get started, I do want to say hello to the chat. We have Super Typhon being a lurker. Good to see you, and hello to all the lurkers in chat. Welcome on in, my guys. So before we get started, I do want to go over the flight plan for today's stream. Here it is, guys. Go to our nav map. So we'll start here at first flight. Then we'll make our way up to Kitty Hawk before making our way across the eastern coast. And we make our way to Little Greenville before heading to our first stop here at Wilson Industrial Airport outside of Wilson, North Carolina. That'll be our first stop. Second stop, we'll go through some of the major cities in central North Carolina, including Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, the Research Triangle, Greensboro, the city of Greensboro, North Carolina, and Winston-Salem. We'll visit Winston-Salem as well. We'll stop here at Smith Reynolds Airport. Then from there, we'll enter into Winston-Salem. And then we'll make our way from Winston-Salem all the way to the largest city in the state, Charlotte, North Carolina. We'll fly over briefly over the Motor Speedway, then to Charlotte, North Carolina. And finally, we'll make our last stop at Charlotte Douglas. I decided to change it from its original route because it would be a little closer, save a bit of the distance. So the plane we're taking here today is the Cirrus SR-22T. And no, I didn't pick this plane because of its looks. To be fair, it actually fits North Carolina's colors pretty well. The University of North Carolina, the Tar Heel blue, along with the black and white. But also, I just think it fits the distance. So that's the plane we're going to be taking here today. And I will be taking this for the Minnesota flight as well. It is a Minnesota plane. So before we get into the cockpit, I actually want to go do some walking around here. That's because there is a place we're going to have to visit here first. Of course, I'm talking about the Wright Brothers National Memorial. And it's right outside the grounds of the airport. So we're going to actually walk up there. So we're actually going to go walk past here. Take a visit to the National Memorial. Yeah, this is a handcrafted airport. You know how cool this is? You can just walk and explore all this. Here's the Wright Brothers National Memorial. Oh, it's up here. So the Wright Brothers National Memorial is located here in Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina. It commemorates the first successful flight from a heavier-than-air machine. From 1900 to 1903, Wilbur and Orville Wright came here from Dayton based on information about the area's steady winds to do their aeronautics testing. And the Wrights made 4 flights from level ground near the base of a hill in 1903 in the Wright Flyer, following 3 years of gliding experiments. Atop this and under sand dunes, you can actually walk around the actual routes of the 4 flights with small monuments from their starts to the finish. The memorial itself was actually built in March 1927. 418,000 people visited this monument in 2021. So there are a couple of exhibits here, mainly the hangar. The field and hangar are actually replicas, as well as its visitor center are all major parts of the memorial. The memorial itself is a 60-foot tall granite monument dedicated in 1932. It's perched atop the 90-foot tall Kill Devil Hill. Look at that. How cool is that? that's pretty cool. That's nice about the walk around feature is you can actually visit these places on foot. Look at the view from the view up here. Nice. What an awesome view up here. So yeah, you have Orville, you have Wilbur Wright. How cool is that? Also, in addition, if you look down this area, we can see the old stuff here. Let's go ahead and get this Cirrus SR-22 started. So we're actually here at First Flight Airport, by the way, where we're going to be starting our trip. This airport, by the way, is where this airport itself is the site of the hundreds of gliding experiments by the Wright brothers, and right around the area where they actually flew here. But this is a GA airport not far from the National Monument, and it's a pretty small airport with only a 3,000-foot runway. But I picked this airport for us to start is because of its national significance with the Wright brothers. Which is why I wanted to start here today. So that is where we're going to be going here today. I already took a picture of the monument here. But did I forget to do something? Oh, I did forget. Yeah, I never checked the chocks of this thing. Oops. My apologies. And then Kitty Hawk, North Carolina is actually located in the Outer Dune Banks, and it was established in the 18th century as Chickahawk, is where Kitty Hawk came from. However, this area became more famous for the Wright brothers' flight, just 4 miles south of the town, and they, in fact, after the 4 flights, they actually walked back to Kitty Hawk, while a lot of people thought Kitty Hawk was where they did the flight. And it even has some name stakes on a few aircraft, including an entire aircraft carrier, a stealth bomber, P-40, and even the command module have all been named after the town, pioneering American and global aviation history. We're here in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Head your way there. So this here is Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, on the eastern. It's in Dare County, North Carolina. It's part of the Pamlico Sound, which, by the way, this whole area here is the Pamlico Sound. This is the largest lagoon in the eastern coast U.S. It extends to 80 miles long and 15 to 20 miles wide. And this area has historically been a major issue for ships. It's mainly used nowadays for boating, fishing, crabbing, and more. However, historically, this area has a more important history, mainly with a lot of ships. And there's a lot of different sounds here, but historically, this area has had a lot of shipwrecks over the years. So, we're going to follow this around for 86 nautical miles. This is Albemarle Sound, which is where we're at. This estuary has had a long history. It was mainly used by the indigenous Pomoko peoples for their canoes and trapping fish or fishing camps. The first Europeans came here in 1586. And they mainly brought a lot of tobacco, where they used colony from. The Outer Banks is all this area is the Outer Banks, and this is got a lot of history with the maritime stuff. Particularly, is wrecking ships. A lot of ships were wrecked here. Right? As a result, you can find lots of shipwrecks here. And apparently, this area right here was also this region was also where Blackbeard was killed, the infamous pirates of modern legend. So I hope you're all having a great week. I know this weekend's pretty good. Happy Valentine's Day to all you guys out there too. Today is February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you guys out here too. So we're going to go ahead and head forward. Albemarle Sound. So we're going to head. We're going to be heading to Greenville for our first. So today we'll be going through some bit of historical stuff. So we're going to talk about talk about North Carolina for a bit. Tar Heel State, as they call it. The southeastern state is bordered by Virginia to the north, Atlantic Ocean to the east, South Carolina to the south, Georgia to the southwest, and Tennessee to the west. 28th largest state in the country by land area, but it's also the nation's 9th most populous city with a population of 10.4 million people. Its capital is Raleigh, and Charlotte is its most populous city, with the Charlotte metropolitan area being around 2.8 million people, which is the most populous metro area in North Carolina, and the largest banking center in the country after New York. Of course, you also have the Research Triangle area, which is around 2.3 million, and it's home to the largest research park in the country. However, North Carolina's got a bit of an interesting history. There are lots of native people. King Charles granted the name Carolina in 1670, but they eventually divided into two, and North Carolina was a royal colony in 1729 and one of the 13 colonies. North Carolina was also involved in the Civil War. It did secure succession from the Union, becoming the 10th of 11 states to do it, but it was very reluctant to join the Confederates. Of course, most people know North Carolina is where aviation really began, was heavier than air aviation began in North Carolina in Kitty Hawk. Of course, it's also a very diverse state geographically, thanks to its wide elevations. But it creates a really unique state here of North Carolina, from the Appalachian Mountains to the Piedmont and Atlantic Coastal Plain. All make North Carolina a very unique area geographically. When talking about the history of North Carolina, have to talk about a bit of its indigenous history. See, North Carolina was inhabited for at least 10,000 years by succeeding prehistoric indigenous cultures. Before 200 AD, people were building a lot of earthwork platform mounds for ceremonial and religious purposes. People established by 10,000 AD, the Piedmont Mountain regions continued to build mound-style buildings. Of course, in the this area became known as the homeland of the historic Cherokee people, and they believed to migrate over here from the Great Lakes. In starting 1540, the native policies of the Mississippian culture fell apart, and new groups such as the Catawba and others were formed, and new native groups became a major part of it. And speaking about the Cherokee, well, we're going to talk plenty about the Cherokee when we do the national, the Trail Tiers. We'll talk more about the Cherokee because they were one of the major Native American groups that were most affected by the Trail Tiers. We'll talk plenty about that when we do the Trail Tiers National Trail. We'll talk plenty about the Cherokee people. Historically dominant tribes in North Carolina included the Algonquin-speaking tribes like the Choctaw, Roanoke, Pamlico, Machapunga, and Corey. The Iroquois-speaking Marin, Cherokee, and Tuscarora in the interior, and the southeastern human tribes of the Chiricahua, Waxhaw, Saponi, Cape Fear Indians, and the Catawba people. In the late 16th century, the first Spanish explorers traveled inland, met the Mississippi people of Aurora, a regional chieftain in Morgantown. Records showed that Hernando de Sosa attended the meeting to them. And a couple of other groups have met them during the coast. But of course, in terms of European history, all that, let's start with a bit of the Anglo-European settlement, because this area was first settled in 1584 by Elizabeth I to Stalwart Raleigh, for whom the capital is named, in the land of present-day North Carolina. However, while this was the second American territory they tried to colonize, but both failed. The colony established in 1587 saw 118 colonists disappear, and it was known as the Lost Colony of Roanoke Island. And yeah, this lost colony has its own history. It's one of the most debated mysteries in American history. Yeah, and everyone should probably know about the Lost Colony. Of course, we don't get that until back to 1650, when, after almost 60 years of it, settlers from the Virginia colony moved to the Albertano Sound region, eastern coast, and by 1663, King Charles II of England granted a charter to start a new colony. This time, it would be modern-day North Carolina, and he named after his father, Charles I. The new charter resolved all the territory questions as well. It eventually built to modern Carolina. And he mainly gave it to those of the Lords Proprietors, the 8 Englishmen to whom King Charles II granted ownership, and all these men remained loyal to the crown and aided his restoration to the throne. However, in 1712, due to disputes and grievances, the Carolina colony was split between North and South Carolina. And eventually, North Carolina became a royal colony in 1729. In 1738 and 1739, smallpox caused high fatalities among the Native Americans who had no immunity to the disease. And then, of course, that devastated much of the local native populations. And apparently it's said to kill off, at least according to historian Russell Thornton, the epidemic was said to kill 1/2 of the entire Cherokee. Again, by native diseases ended up killing more people than the colonist itself. Of course, during the colonial period, a lot during the colonial period as well. Mainly the fact that North Carolina grew. It was also where a lot of piracy happened. Mainly the Queen Anne's Revenge ran aground in North Carolina. And eventually Blackbeard was killed by troops from Virginia in 1718. And again, it also became one of the 13 colonies, and it mainly grew to a lot of tobaccos. Of course, during the American Revolution, English and Gaelic-speaking Highland Scots tended to remain loyal to the British Crown due to business and personal connections, while Western North Carolina favored American independence. So as a result, North Carolina actually eventually became independent for the British Crown. In fact, it was the first to instruct its delegates to the Continental Congress. And of course, throughout the Revolutionary War, fierce guerrilla warfare between the pro-independence and pro-British colonists, and North Carolina became a battleground for much of the American Revolution. Most notably, the major American victory at Kings Mountain is one of the most important battles of the American Revolution. This major American victory, led by Patrick Ferguson, led the American Patriots beat British. This victory at Kings Mountain gave advantage to colonies who favored independence, prevented the British Army from requiring new soldiers. And of course, the road to Yorktown America's independence was through North Carolina, including victories in Charleston and Kansas, South Carolina. Moved north as the British moved north. Southern Division prepared to meet them, and it led to the Battle of Cowpens, 1781, when they defeated the British. It was the race for the Dan. And of course, there was also Battle of Cowpens Ford as well, which was one of the final battles of the American Revolution. While the British won that battle, it actually ended up to be his defeat in Yorktown in 1781. And eventually, after independence in 1789, North Carolina became the 12th state to ratify the U.S. Constitution, becoming the 12th state union. So here it is. That's the slide I was talking about. Now we have the America's independence through Yorktown, Battle of Cowpens Ford, where the British ended up defeating, and North Carolina made the Constitution. In 1800, during the antebellum period, after 1800, cotton and tobacco became important crops. And the eastern half of the state, particularly coastal plain, developed a slave-based society with plantations, slave labor, and they had significant planters owned significant political and social economic power during antebellum North Carolina, which they placed their interests over the non-slave owned farmers. While it was less concentrated than other states, more than 330,000 people were enslaved African American, mainly working on the Piedmont plantations in Piedmont coastal plains. After the American Revolution, Quakers and Mennonites were also worked to pressure slaveholders to free slaves. Some were inspired by their efforts in language of the Revolution, and as a result, increased more free people of color. Of course, during this time in the mid-century, states rural and connected areas were connected by the construction of a 129-mile wooden plank road known as the Farmers Railroad from Fayetteville to Bethania. And then, of course, they built their own railroad in 1836, the Wilmington and Raleigh Railroad, to connect Wilmington to the state capital. And of course, they eventually created the North Carolina Railroad in 1849. However, then we get to the Civil War era. The Civil War officially hits Tar Heel State. In 1860, North Carolina was a slave state, which is pretty important considering 1/3 of the population was African American slaves. However, the state did not vote to join the Confederacy until Abraham Lincoln called it to invade its sister state, South Carolina, becoming the last or penultimate state to officially join the Confederacy. Though it has been disputed because of Tennessee. Around 125,000 troops from North Carolina served in the Confederate Army, and about 15,000 North Carolina troops served in Union Army regiments. Over 3,000 North Carolina troops died from combat or disease during the war. And Confederate troops from all parts of North Carolina served in virtually all battles of the Army of Northern Virginia, the most famous army. And the largest battle fought in the state was in Bentonville, which was a futile attempt by Confederate General Joseph Johnston to slow Tecumseh Sherman across the Carolinas. In fact, the first Confederate soldier to be killed in the Civil War was a North Carolina soldier, Henry Wyatt, during the Battle of Big Bethel. June 1861. Also, the North Carolina was involved with Pickett's Charge and diverts the furs into Union lines of any regiment, as well as other battles. So North Carolina's phrase was through much of the 20th century. So, after secession, though, some North Carolinians did not support the Confederacy, mainly the Yeoman farmers in the West. And they actually either remained neutral or became sympathetic to the Union. Of course, once the Confederacy fell into 1865, North Carolina and other Confederate states were put under direct control of the U.S. military in Reconstruction. In 1868, the Republican-dominated government was victorious, with 19 African Americans holding positions in the South North Carolina state legislature. And the Republican coalition of black freemen, Northern carpetbaggers, and local scalawags controlled state government for 3 years, until the Democrats tried to take control of state legislature and try to suppress black voting, and eventually led to the Democrats winning as well. Of course, once the Democrats got in office, you guys all probably know what happened. They started putting a lot of racial laws, pro-era literacy tests, poll taxes to keep black Americans in the state from voting. As well, they didn't have a lot of writing. So after Reconstruction, North Carolina became a one-party state dominated by the Democrats, and the state mainly continued with economy based on tobacco, cotton textiles, and commodity art agriculture. Of course, one of the most famous moments in the state happened in 1903, which is where the Wright brothers took off the Wright Flyer in Kitty Hawk on December 17th, 1903. In the first half of the 20th century, many African Americans left the state in the Great Migration north, and it changed a lot of the demographic characteristics of the area. Then, during the Great Depression, North Carolina was hard hit by the Great Depression, but the New Deal programs from FDR, mainly for its cotton tobacco, helped the farmers, and after World War II, it grew rapidly. Cities like Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham growing immensely. Then they also established the Research Tropical Park in 1909, which is the largest research park in the country, all the different units. And then in the Civil Rights Movement in 1960 was the Greenboro sit-ins. Played a major role in the movement by bringing full equality to American blacks. Spurred by this, in the 1960s, with the leftward tilted National Democrats, conservative whites voted for the Republican candidate. Basically a political switch. And North Carolina has continued to grow ever since the 70s, with more population growth, mainly with the Piedmont Crescent, like Charlotte, Concord, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, Durham, Raleigh. By the 90s, Charlotte became a major regional and national banking center, while the Research Triangle area with all those universities attracted a more educated workforce for jobs. And by the late 20th and 20th century, economic industries like technology, pharmaceuticals, banking, food processing, vehicle parts, and tourism are now the main economic drivers of North Carolina, which marked a shift from its former industries of tobacco, textiles, and furniture, allowing North Carolina to grow more as to a more modern. That concludes our history lesson for the U.S. state of North Carolina. That wraps up some bit of our news and information about the Tar Heel State. Guys, I hope you're all having a good week here. I know a lot of things have been going on. So this week in the Flight Sim community, I know Murphy's gonna be back on later tonight. On his stream, he'll be in. I believe he's gonna be in A Corona. He'll be taking the DA-40 from Cows into Spain. Bilbao, Asturias, in Corona. Each is mountains and scenery. Most that's what he's going to be doing tonight. Tomorrow is going to be Allison. She'll be back with her historical recreation, taking the R44 from Mykonos over to Cyprus. So it's going to be about a 439 nautical mile flight, and it says about 4 hours and 8 minutes. It'll be about 4 hours. So that's what's going on in her channel today. For me, I'm just gonna probably rest easy and get ready for Sunday stream to Rhode Island. We'll be entering the last of the 13 colonies. Sunday, we'll be taking the airship. That one, which again is definitely a little unique. So of course, I know a lot of you guys are going to be asking yourself, why is North Carolina's nicknamed the Tar Heel State? Well, the origins of the Tar Heel State date back to the mid-18th to 19th century, as North Carolina was a major producer of turpentine, tar, pitch, and other materials from its pine tree. And the tar heel was applied to a lot of the poor white laborers who produced that sort of thing. It was embraced by Confederate North Carolina soldiers during the Civil War, and it grew even more following the war citizens. Turpentine mainly is used for a lot of solvents. That's what turpentine's used for. The solvent, and also for organic synthesis, and they mainly use it for industrial uses, for oil, thinning oil-based paints, produce varnishes, and raw material for chemicals. But it's eventually used for their sports teams too. That's what University of North Carolina. What's going on here? So we're about to get our way here. So we're going to be heading to Greenville here pretty soon. I hope you guys have some really cool plans this weekend. What I've also been doing is I'm working on some of the trail stuff. So for my Hitting Up the Trail series, so I got done with a lot more of the trails so far, including the Mormon Trail, Nez Perce Trail, the Old Spanish Trail, and I'm currently working on a bit of the Oregon Trail, of the Oregon's Trail as well. So mainly working on the Oregon Trail. I'm gonna get like 6 parts of it, and then working on all these different trails. So I'll get that working on guys here. In terms of news and stuff, so I want to talk a little bit about another thing about North Carolina, and that's geography. So North Carolina is quite a diverse, geographically diverse state, and there are main 3 regions of North Carolina. The east, you have the Atlantic Coastal Plain to the east, Central Piedmont region, and in the west, the Appalachian Mountains. The coastal plain consists of the more defined areas of the Outer Banks, a string of sandy, narrow barrier islands separated by the mainland by sounds and inlets, including the Albemarle and Pamlico Sounds. And then you have the intercoastal plain, basically where longleaf pine trees are native. Of course, Cape Hatteras was also more infamous for being the graveyard of the Atlantic due to all the ships sunk here, including, in fact, more than 1,000 ships have sunk in these waters since records in 1526. Most famous, though, was Queen Anne's Revenge in 1718. Of course, this coastal plain transitions to more of the Atlantic seaboard to the Piedmont region. The elevations start, waterfalls first began here, and it's also where the most populous regions located, containing the 6 largest cities. And of course, it's gently rolling countryside, frequently broken by hills and low mountain range. And some of these peaks include the Sorrowtown Mountains, Pollitt Mountains, King's Pinnacle, and the South Mountain. And then the western part of the state is the Blue Ridge Mountains of the Appalachian Range, which includes, of course, the Great Smoky Mountains and the Black Mountains. And the Black Mountains are actually the highest in the U.S., with Mount Mitchell, 6,684 feet, highest point east of the Mississippi. In terms of its climate, North Carolina is got a variable climate. Its climate varies between the more temperate mountainous terrain and the more humid subtropical climate. North Carolina also does experience severe weather both summer and winter, with summer bringing the threat of hurricanes, tropical storms, and heavy rains. While more in the wintertime, during the winter, can lead to major ice events. So do be careful about that. So pretty interesting stuff about North Carolina's geography. In terms of other stuff, we do have wildlife here in the state. There's all sorts of different animal life here in North Carolina. Um, some of the animals that live here include the Virginia possum lives up here, one of the only marsupials in North America. Lots of different rodent species, from North American beaver to the flying squirrels, different mice species, various bat species, including the endangered Indiana bat, carnivore species like bobcats, coyotes, cougars, but those are extirpated. American black bear is one of the most famous species here in the state. And more. Not quite a few animals though. We're gonna head to there's Greenville, North Carolina. We'll head once we head there, we'll head up for another 31 nautical miles. Our next stop in Wilson Industrial. We're gonna make our way up here. We'll turn right and we'll head our way to our first. This is Greenville, North Carolina. Pretty cool city. Now we're gonna head our way up to our first. Before we get to our first stop, I want to talk about the economy. I know it's a little early at first to normally talk about it, but because we're going to be in a lot of cities and stuff pretty shortly, I wanted to go ahead and talk about this here. So, economically wise, its total GDP in 2018 was 496 billion, which is which is quite a bit. Its median income is 41st out of 50 states with $46,000. It also has the 14th highest poverty rate at 17.6%. But the state does have a lot of diversity in its economy due to its hydroelectric power, pleasant climate, wide variety of soils. So as a result, it's the third of all Southern Atlantic states in population, but leads it in industry and agriculture, mainly with tobacco production. Yes, tobacco is produced a lot here in North Carolina, and the reason why tobacco grew to be so well known in North Carolina's industry, reason it's grown so much in North Carolina is probably because, well, its soil turned out to be incredibly good for tobacco growth. As a result, its largest city, Charlotte, is also a major textile and trade center, as well as Raleigh and others are great for technology. And while North Carolina's urban areas have enjoyed a prosperous economy, its rural counties have suffered a lot from job loss, rising poverty, and population loss due to the lack of industrial areas. For example, according to one estimate, one half of North Carolina's 100 counties have lost population since 2010 due to the poor economy. So it's becoming much more urbanized than it was in years past. Just something pretty interesting to know about North Carolina. So, we're going to be heading to. So, we're officially going to make our way to Wilson Industrial for our first stop. So we're going to go here. And prepare us for the flight across the Research Triangle, which is going to be mainly including Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. We'll be flying around these areas for a bit and get to explore some of these areas. But yeah, we're going to be hitting a lot of major communities back to back to back. Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Greensboro, and Winston-Salem. We'll be hitting all those back to back to back to back. Because all of these communities are very important. So, and we'll get a little bit started on one more thing as well. I want to talk about a little bit about arts and culture here in the Tar Heel State. So one of the more interesting things about North Carolina is its arts and cultures, and it's actually got a lot of strong traditions when it comes to that. In fact, the arts and culture industry here in North Carolina generates $1.2 billion in economic activity in the state, supporting more than 43,000 full-time jobs and generating 119 million in revenue for local governments and state. In fact, it established the North Carolina Museum of Arts, the first major museum collection in the country formed by state legislation. It continues to bring millions to the economy. Of course, one of the most famous arts communities in the state is Seagrove, the handmade pottery capital of the U.S., where artisans create handcrafted pottery inspired by the same traditions that began in the community more than 200 years ago. That's located in Randolph County. Of course, North Carolina has a really rich culture. And of course, North Carolina has a really rich culture. We talk about it because it's rich in a lot of areas in culture. Music, to shopping, and cuisine. It's got a rich culture. That's not like many other states in the southern United States. So, we're getting ready to make our first stop very shortly. We'll prepare for the next leg to Winston-Salem, Smith Reynolds Airport. Get there soon. We'll park and we'll talk more about North Carolina. Get there. Got only 192 nautical miles left. We're about 40 miles away from making halfway through the journey. Here we go, guys. Our first stop of the day here in Winston Industrial. Here we go, guys. We'll make our first lane today. So, guys, stop right here, and we'll be taking our first stop of the day here at Wilson Industrial Airport. So we'll stop here for a bit today. We'll stop here for a bit. If any of you guys want to join on in, we fly the Southeast Asian server, and our route is here. That's our route for today. Break. So we'll go ahead and prepare for the second leg. Let's go ahead and get the second leg going. And we're going to go ahead and fly we're going to go ahead and talk a bit about North Carolina for a bit. Let's talk more about the music in the state. So musically, North Carolina is well known for being home to a lot of a rich music history. You see, it has a lot of jazz musicians. Some of the most important jazz musicians actually came here from the state, including John Coltrane, Galen S. Monk, Billy Taylor, Luke Donaldson, Woody Shaw, Hal Farlow, the Heath brothers of Albert, Jimmy, and Percy Heath, Nina Simone, and Billy Strayhorn. Of course, the state is also famous for its old-time music, with many recordings made in the early 20th century by folk song collector Bascom Lunsford, and musicians such as the North Carolina Ramblers helped solidify the sound of country music in the 20s, while influential bluegrass musician Doc Watson hailed from North Carolina, and he was most well known for winning seven Grammys bluegrass music. And the world blues also had a lot of strong hotbeds here in both North and South Carolina. The Research Triangle area has also got lots of folk, rock, metal, jazz, and punk, with many famous artists like James Taylor. He grew up here, a six-time Grammy Award winner, and he wrote his song Carolina in My Mind. And other musicians like J. Cole, Knife Wonder, Roberta Flack, Warren Hayes, Jimmy Herring, Eric Church, Randy Travis, Ronnie Millsap, David Brothers, Charlie Daniels, and Luke Combs are all from North Carolina. Like I said, it's got a rich music history. You also got, in fact, North Carolina is also home to more American Idol finalists than any state, including Clay Aiken, Chris Daughtry, most famously Chris Daughtry, Kelly Pickler, Guy McCreary, and Caleb Johnson. 3 of those are also the winners too. So yeah, a rich music history. And rivaling its music history, North Carolina has a really well-known cuisine as well. After all, of course, the big major staple for Carolina food is pork barbecue, with strong regional differences across state, mainly in sauces and methods. So West North Carolina, they mainly use Boston butt putted pork, which is premium, and it uses tomato-based sauce. And only the pork shoulder is used, the darker meat. It's known as Lexington barbecue, thanks to the Piedmont Triad town of Lexington, home to the Barbecue Festival in Lexington, which attracts over 100,000 visitors. East North Carolina uses vinegar and red pepper-based sauce, and the whole hog is cooked. Of course, Krispy Kreme, the international chain of donut stores, was started here in Maids and Winston-Salem. Also introduced in the state is Pepsi Cola in 1898 in New Bern, as well as the regional soft drink cheer line based in Salisbury. Other major companies and stuff include Texas Pete, which was actually created here, Hardee's, started in Mount Runt, Bojangles in Charlotte, Golden Corral in North Carolina, and more. Over the last decade, North Carolina has become a cultural epicenter for prize-winning wine, cheeses, and more. And of course, North Carolina's also got areas for beef and dairy cattle. As a result, North Carolina is a major ship in those two. But of course, the big thing that long held the state is tobacco. After all, it was one of the first industries developed after the Civil War happened with Reconstruction, and the invention of a cigarette made it very popular. Mainly, Winston-Salem was the birthplace of R.G. Reynolds Tobacco Company, the largest one in the state. And at one point, by 1914, it sold more than 425 million packs of Campbell's tobacco, tobacco, and more. So yeah, lots of rich industry in a lot of states. And finally, the last major thing to talk about here in North Carolina is tourism. Charlotte is the most visited city in the state with 28.3 million visitors in 2018. Area attractions include the sports teams, Carolina Panthers and the Charlotte Hornets sports teams, Carowinds Amusement Park, Charlotte Motor Speedway, the U.S. National Whitewater Center, Discovery Place, Sea Life Aquarium, NASCAR Hall of Fame, the Billy Graham Library, and more. Lots of different places. Also, another region that gets a lot of visitors is the Appalachian regions in the West. Mainly, they visit the Biltmore State, which you guys all probably know the Biltmore, the largest privately owned house in the country, 178,000 square feet. Thankfully, Biltmore did survive Hurricane Helene. However, Asheville, on the other hand, uh, Asheville's, and of course, you also visit the Blue Ridge Parkway and Smoky Mountains in the west. And of course, Asheville is a really great place to visit. However, Hurricane Helene happened and it completely wrecked the city. It was absolutely devastating. It completely damaged down trees, damaged homes, local roads, and more. I think Asheville is still having issues. Um, it's still having issues. Uh, it's it's still it's recovering, but man, it really damaged a lot of stuff. Raleigh could visit the African American Cultural Complex, North Carolina Museum of Art, History, Natural Sciences, Sports Hall of Fame, the J.C. Rawlinson Arboretum, and the Mordecai House. They also have its own sports team, its NHL franchise, the Carolina Hurricanes. And then you have the Piedmont Triad with a lot of different. And it's also home to the North Carolina Zoo, one of only two zoos in this to be supported by their state. So yeah, North Carolina has a lot of places for people to visit, tourism, and more. Tons of stuff for everyone. Thank you, Typhon, for getting rid of the bots. So I'll cover the rest of the stuff again. We're going to be going through this pretty quickly. Of course, we'll be visiting the state capital very shortly. We'll be hitting the state capital of North Carolina, Raleigh. But I'm going to see Asheville is coming back to being where it's at today. So here it is, guys. Raleigh, North Carolina will be coming up very shortly. Is Raleigh. This is the state capital of North Carolina. It's also the second most populous city in the state after Charlotte, with a population of 467,000 people. This city, its nickname is the City of Oaks, thanks to its many oak trees that line the heart of the city. This city is it's named after Sir Walter Raleigh, who established the Roanoke colony in Dare County. The city is most well known for being the home of North Carolina State University, NC State, and part of the Research Triangle with Durham and Chapel Hill. And Raleigh was one of the early examples in the U.S. of a planned city, as this area was chosen as the site of the state capital in 1788. During the Civil War, the city was spared from any significant battle, As a result, it didn't get damaged as much as other southern U.S. cities. Since the 21st century, it had become one of the fastest growing cities in the country. One of the more unique things about Raleigh to keep in mind that education's a big part. Lots of companies are based here too. Advanced Auto Parts, Capital Broadcast Companies, Golden Corral, and Lulu are all based in the city. And of course, the big sport event here in the city is the NHL team, the Carolina Hurricanes. They've been playing here since 1997 when they moved from Hartford. In fact, they're the only North Carolina team of any sports league to win a championship, winning the Stanley Cup in 2006. The other big ticket in town is NC State, where they've won. The football team plays at Carter Finley, the second largest football stadium in the state, while the men's team plays at the Lenovo Center in Raleigh. So that's the big things about the city of Raleigh, North. We'll be flying around the capital pretty soon. Get near the capital, we'll be flying around Raleigh. Whoops. We just blew by the capital. Whoops. I was busy looking at something and I forgot to fly over it. So luckily we're just going to go ahead and turn west and fly over downtown Raleigh. Then we'll fly over North Carolina State University. We'll take pictures of NC State. Yes, this area's got tons of universities. Here's downtown Raleigh. The North Carolina State Capitol is down below us. Here is North Carolina State Capitol. Pause. This. Here's North Carolina State Capitol. Here's the capital city. There's the state capitol building down here. The state capitol, and here's downtown Raleigh. Look at that, guys. Cool. Ahead of us is NC State, North Carolina State University, the Wolfpack. Plays in the ACC conference. I know Louisville just beat North Carolina State about a while ago. Yes, we'll be visiting each of these best states. Here's NC State. So here's the campus of North Carolina State. Here's NC State. Passed over. Now over here is going to be Carter Finley in the Lenovo Center. Both homes to Carter Finley is home to North Carolina State football. The Lenovo Center is shared between the North Carolina Hurricanes and the NC State men's basketball team. Not far from campus. Not far at all. So our next stop is we're going to go 332 degrees. And we'll be flying over to the city of Durham next. Durham is also located within the Research Triangle. And Durham is most well known for being North Carolina's fourth most populous city of 283,000 people. It was established as a railway depot in 1849 donated by Bartlett S. Durham. The namesake, following the Civil War, Durham grew rapidly due to the tobacco industry. And it became the headquarters of the American Tobacco Company in 1881. Textile and electric power also played an important role. And while those industries declined, the city underwent revitalization and population growth to become an educational, medicinal, and research. It's also home to several institutions of higher ed, but most notably Duke University. Duke, a very historical university founded by Methodists and Quakers in 1838. And Duke is the most well-known university, and the campus is known for its neo-Gothic chapel and National Museum of Art, as well as other notable sites in the city like the Museum of Life and Science, Durham Performing Arts Center, and the Durham Homestead Tobacco Factory, historic site. And of course, this airport here is Raleigh-Durham International. And Raleigh-Durham, by the way, is a very fastly grown airport. By the way, Raleigh-Durham is actually a very fast-growing airport, which makes sense considering Raleigh-Durham is a fast-growing city. Of course, Durham's big sports thing. Durham is the primary focus is college sports are a big deal in the city, mainly Duke University, and most specifically, Duke basketball is a huge deal in the city. They've been selling every home game at Duke basketball since 1990, and they're known for their Cameron Crazies. Duke sports are a big deal. They've won Division I 3 times since 2001. Duke's also got football too, but it's mainly basketball. And most specifically, we'll be flying over Duke University. Of course, when you talk about Duke, obviously you gotta talk about its basketball program. Duke basketball is the talk of the area. They've won 5 national championships, tied with Indiana, and they've appeared in 11 NCAA basketball national championship games, and it's 4th all times of any NCAA basketball program. Currently coached by John Shayer. And Duke's having another great season as always. Duke's had incredible success. And there have been 11 Duke players named National Player of the Year and 71 Duke players into the NBA draft. And of course, when you talk about Duke, I mean, they sell out every game for 12,000 people. Of course, if you think one person, there have been many people who played at Duke. If I gotta say the most notable players, they include Dick Grote, Christian Laettner, Elton Brand, Sheet Batty, and most recently Zion Williamson. But of course, if I gotta pick one person to be like the face of Duke, it has to be Coach K, or specifically Mike Krzyzewski. From 1980 to 2022, he won 5 national championships, went to 13 Final Fours, the most intimate tournament wins ever at 101, 15 30-win seasons, and Coach K is an icon of college basketball. Coach K, absolute legend in college basketball. He is modern day. They also have a football program too. Well, but it's not nearly as popular for obvious reasons. Duke has been nowhere near successful football. Also, Durham's got one more thing going for it, and that is the minor league baseball team, the Durham Bulls. And of course, there was a movie about this called Bull Durham, and that helped build the popularity of Durham Bulls as a team. So we'll be fun. So here's Durham. We'll also be flying over Duke University as well. And fun fact about Duke, as well, they produced a lot of different alumni over the years, including Richard Nixon, the 37th president, astronaut Charles E. Brady, and Apple CEO Tim Cook are also alumni of Duke. Here's Durham. Here's Durham. There's also the baseball stadium here too, home of the Durham Bulls. If this was about baseball, I would talk a little bit more about the Durham Bulls. And then we'll fly over to Duke University. Here's the campus of Duke. If we did a basketball series, college basketball, we'll talk about here's Duke University. And Cameron is not far from here. Cameron Indoor Stadium's right around this area. There's the Duke Chapel. There's the baseball stadium, and there's the basketball facility right down here. Cameron Indoor Stadium, only 9,000 people. A lot of people go watch there for the Duke basketball. But it's a pretty campus. Duke's pretty. This is Duke. course, and the last place is actually not, is right, basically right next door. That is Chapel Hill, guys. And now we get to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So Chapel Hill is a well-known college town of 61,000 people, making the 17th most populous municipality, founded in 1793 in Franklin Street, covered 21 miles. And of course, Chapel Hill is very famous for the University of North Carolina. Um, and UNC is a big part of North Carolina. UNC is a big deal here in the state. The major part of its economy and influence, as well as local artists, have all been a big part of its influence even to today. And of course, the big part of North Carolina has got to be its sports team. All about UNC, North Carolina, the Tar Heels. Been very successful both college basketball and women's soccer. Of course, and again, North Carolina basketball is the big talk of Chapel Hill. And just like Duke, which I talked about earlier, North Carolina's also historically been one of the most successful basketball programs, winning 6 national championships. They went to 21 Final Fours, the most of any programs, in 12 championships. And North Carolina has so many famous people to play basketball, including most notably, and some of the most famous players to ever play college basketball here in North Carolina, including Bob McAdoo, George Karl, Vince Carter, and the most famous basketball figure to be around, at least the most famous player to play at UNC, a guy named Michael Jordan. A guy whose name is Michael Jeffrey Jordan, or better yet, MJ. Michael Jordan himself, the greatest, the GOAT. But of course, they've also had other historic coaches, and most notably Dean Smith and his successor, Roy Williams. But they have so many famous basketball players and such. Can't have that without mentioning its sports history. Here it is, guys, Chapel Hill. Also, in other news, the football program also has Bill Belichick. I'm just wanted to tell you guys that much too, because as if anything can't get weirder, it does. It can get weird. Much. So yeah, here's the football stadium. The second largest football stadium in the state. There's the basketball stadium. Fun fact, I believe the basketball facility here can hold up to over 20,000 people. Yeah, they play at the Dean Smith Center. 21,000 people can watch basketball games there. So once we get done through this, we're going to go ahead and we're also going to have to climb up to. We're going to climb up to 2,000. Let's go talk about some other stuff here. And we went back to Chapel Hill. Let's go ahead and talk about more about North Carolina itself while we get back up here for a bit. In terms of North Carolina, transportation's a big deal here in the state. North Carolina's transportation's a big deal. After all, it consists of air, water, transport, public transportation. Of course, North Carolina actually has the second largest highway system in the country, as well as the largest ferry system in the East Coast. So they got a large amount of highways with multiple interstates. North Carolina's airports serve destinations across the globe, not just in the US, but Canada, Europe, Central America, and the Caribbean. The busiest airport in the state is by far Charlotte, which is actually the 11th busiest airport in the country, while Raleigh-Durham is on the rise. 37th busiest, but it's on the rise, and it has a growing passenger rail system. And then finally, the last thing before the fun facts is going to be sports. And sports are a big deal here in the state. Huge deal. It's home to 4 Major League Sports franchises. Charlotte has 3 of the 4, being the Carolina Panthers of the NFL, the Charlotte Hornets of the NBA, and Major League Soccer's Charlotte Football Club. While Raleigh is home to the Carolina Hurricanes of the NHL. And the only team that actually has success in the state is ironically the team in Raleigh, the Hurricanes. However, North Carolina doesn't have a Major League Baseball team, but it does have numerous minor league teams, with the highest level being the AAA Charlotte Knights and Durham Bulls. However, there is talks about bringing Major League Baseball to Charlotte. That could very well be a reality, considering how big Charlotte's grown as a city. I would not be surprised if there will be a major team. So that would not be surprising. Of course, one of the biggest traditions here for sports in the state has got to be NASCAR and stock car racing. After all, North Carolina was where NASCAR was really grown in the first place, in North Wilkesboro. Of course, you have to also have the Charlotte Motor Speedway hosting the Cup races, and you have the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte, while Concord is home to a lot of racing teams, including Hendrick Motorsports, Roche Fenway, Stewart Haas Racing Company. And of course, the last thing about sports I do want to bring up is collegiate sports. There are 8 Division I schools in the state. The Atlantic Coast Conference is even headquartered here, and they host both the championship and men's basketball tournament games here in North Carolina. But the big 4, the most notable universities are actually the Tobacco Road University, UNC, Duke, North Carolina State, and Wake Forest. Are all big deals here in the state. The other major college sport I do want to bring up is East Carolina, ECU. The East Carolina University Pirates. Of course, if I gotta talk about one thing about collegiate sports that's a big deal, it is college basketball. College basketball in North Carolina has been a hotbed for college basketball for decades. Makes sense when you have some incredibly successful programs, including UNC, Duke, North Carolina State, even Wake Forest has had some success in basketball too. Are all major basketball universities. But if I gotta talk about one basketball thing that really puts this state on notice, is it might just be considered to be the best rivalry in American sports. Carolina Duke. A rivalry that's been going back since 1920, and they played every single year. And it's considered to be the best rivalry, not just in college basketball, but maybe the best in all college sports. Like, no joke, this series has been extremely close, with NC taking the lead in the series 145 to 118 out of the 263 meetings. And the reason why this rivalry is a big deal is because they're only 8 miles apart. That's right, they're 8 miles. They're basically next door to each other. You can get to both universities. Plus, you have also the dynamic with private university schools, and of course, both programs being immensely successful. It's not a surprise this is the top rivalry in college basketball. And you also have legendary coaches, figures too. It just makes sense. And many of the rivalry games have also been extremely close. Like, no joke. Um, this rivalry has been extremely close. The margin of victories are always typically very close. That's also what makes it such a great rivalry, too. Of course, it's also not as big on football. It's still intense, but not nearly as much in football. But there's still tradition in that rivalry. Of course, and then you also have other programs too that have been very successful in basketball. NC State, mind you, has won 2 national championships in college basketball. NC State's also got another rivalry. Duke's also got rivalries with NC State. With the other Tobacco Road games, NC State's another big program. They won 2 national championships. Well, NC State has won 2 national titles as well. They've been very successful in NC State, mainly with Jim Valvano, having won 2 national championships. They've won 2 programs with Norm Sloan and Jim Valvano, winning 2 national championships, and they've had several successful players, mainly David Thompson, Lorenzo Charles, and more. And then you also have Wake Forest, Demon Deacons, private school. They're most well known for producing 2 major Hall of Fame caliber players in Tim Duncan and Chris Paul. With Tim Duncan and Chris Paul were the 2 most famous players. And they also have Muggsy Bogues also as well too. Demon Deacons haven't been nearly as successful as the other programs, though that being said, they still have produced some basketball players. But yes, college sports are huge too in the state, and there's no question about it. That's something I do want to bring up to you guys too. Of course, that covers the sports stuff, and that will be still got 2 more slides about the Bay State before we talk about the cities. We got those. So I hope you guys are enjoying the slides and enjoying the information. I wanted to grab you guys about the U.S. states. If you guys are enjoying the stream, we have a Discord here if you guys want to check out our Discord. And we stream 3 days a week, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays here on Twitch. We're doing the 50 States 50 on Sundays. On Fridays and Sundays. So our next place is going to be Greensboro, North Carolina. Will be our next city we'll be flying to. Is Greensboro. So Greensboro, North Carolina, is one of the largest. It's actually North Carolina's third most populous city after Charlotte and Raleigh, with 302,000 people. Its metro area is around 789,000 people. It's in the and then the Piedmont Triad region is 1.7 million. Greensboro was planned to have around Central Courthouse Square in 1808, and some of its most notable attractions include Greensboro Science Center, International Civil Rights Museum, the Container Center for the Performing Arts, the Waterspoon Art Museum, and the Greensboro Ballet, with annual festivals including the North Carolina Folk Festivals, the 4th of July Festival, and Winter Wonderland. Of course, Greensboro is most notable for hosting its sport events at the Greensboro Coliseum Complex, with events like the NCAA ACC basketball tournament and women's basketball, as well as home to some minor league franchises. One of the most famous things this city is known for. That's what's going to happen here. That's Greensboro. Oh yeah, Murph Stream is started a little early tonight, so we might actually raid Murph Stream after this, guys. If we end up wanting to remain, we can raid Murph Stream. This is Greensboro, North Carolina. And afterwards, we'll get to Winston-Salem. All right, guys. Our next stop is going to be at it's going to be Winston-Salem. Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's actually the 5th most populous city in the state, with 249,000 people. Its metro area is 695,000, and this city is most well known as the Twin City due to its dual heritage and the Camel City, thanks to its historic involvement with the tobacco industry, mainly Camel cigarettes. It's home to 6 colleges and institutions, most famously Wake Forest, founded in 1834. Winston-Salem has been around since it's actually originally 2 cities, but it was merged into 1 city when the 2 cities merged. The city is well known for its historic districts: the Old Salem, which is a restored Moravian settlement, the original buildings, and it's a living history museum. skilled tinsmiths, blacksmiths, gunsmiths, bakers, for a lot of visitors. There's also the historic district of Bethabara, which is where a lot of Moravians from Pennsylvania first settled, including a museum and a Moravian church. And of course, several films were filmed in this area, most notably the X-Files episode Brand X, 2000, Leatherheads in 2008, the football comedy film, and most recently, The Longest Ride in 2014 were filmed here. And then our next stop is Smith Reynolds Airport. This once was this was once the main airport for Winston-Salem until they moved over to the larger Piedmont Triad Airport, which is, well, we're flying right here. Here it is, Piedmont Airport. Piedmont Triad, right here, the new Greensboro Airport. The Smith Reynolds Airport was once home to the Winston-Salem Air Show held in September, which drew around 20,000 spectators, though there has been one since 2015. There are multiple flight schools and maintenance facility as well. And this airport has technically been around since the 30s. And it was used also in World War II as a training base for military pilots. Then Piedmont Airlines had their facilities here at this airport until they moved to the larger Triad Airport. They still served this airport for a long time until they moved it to the newer airport. But yeah, they used to fly this airport to all sorts of places. From Atlanta to Baltimore, Louisville, Cincinnati, Washington, D.C., and more, with a lot of turboprop. Yeah, this airport has a long aviation history. Some people kind of overlook that. So, that's where we're heading to, and Winston-Salem's coming up here pretty strong. We'll land here at Smith Reynolds. We'll land runway 33. We'll land here, and we'll get ready for Hey guys, we're doing quite well here. Guys, really reached the second half of the journey. Yeah, we only got one more leg left to go on this stream, and we'll wrap things up. Charlotte. Hmm. Here it is, guys. Winston-Salem. And we officially made our second stop here, and here's Winston-Salem skyline in the background. So we'll take a break here for just another minute or two, 2-3 minutes, and break. I'm going to go ahead and taxi back to the end of the runway. Include the final leg of the trip. Here, beautiful. Go Winston-Salem and then go to Charlotte. Let's go ahead and complete the final leg of the trip.
Engaging autopilot. Stall.
Yes, Winston-Salem. Oh, here's our lap. Here's Winston-Salem, downtown Winston-Salem. So now we're going to blitz our way into Charlotte. We make our way through here. now we're going to officially talk about the last couple slides for North Carolina. We got 2 more base slides for the state we got to talk about. So first thing to talk about is some of the fun facts about the Tar Heel State, North Carolina. Here's a couple of interesting facts about North Carolina. Of course, you have the USS North Carolina battleship docked here in Wilmington. I actually visited this ship a long while back. She was actually saved in the scrap heap in the 1960s by publicist Christian, including donation and dimes by school children, and she's now in Wilmington. Fun fact about the USS North Carolina, she was one of the fabled battleships of the North Carolina class, which was built in October 1937 and was commissioned in 1941, just in time for World War II. And she was mobilized for war, and she served in the Pacific Theater during the Guadalcanal campaign. And she battled during the Battle of Eastern Solomons in 1942. And she was also fought in the Battle of the Philippine Sea. And she was also involved in Operation Magic Carpet to transport a lot of people home. And she was decommissioned in 1946 and reserved. So she was saved and became a museum ship. Pretty cool stuff, and I visited there too. The University of North Carolina's mascot, the Tar Heels, is a nickname for North Carolinas that came from the days where North Carolina produced a lot of tar, and someone saw a set of footprints by someone who stepped in that. That built the Tar Heel State, and it's now the official nickname of the state. Then we have the Biltmore Home. Is America's largest home with 255-room chateau, an award-winning winery and extensive gardens. Andrew Johnson, however, became the 17th president and the one who reunited the nation. He actually started his career as a tailor's apprentice in Raleigh, rose up to become the 17th president. And finally, New Bern was actually named, which is the Swiss and New German settlement. It's actually named after the founder's home in Bern, Switzerland. Pretty cool stuff about the fun facts. And here's some famous people from the state. Sportscaster Howard Cosell from Winston-Salem. Then we have Elizabeth Hanford Dole from Salisbury. James B. Duke, the namesake of Duke University. He's an industrialist from Durham. Famous evangelist Billy Graham from Charlotte. Catherine Grayson from Winston-Salem. Andy Griff, famous actor Andy Griff from Mount Airy. U.S. President Andrew Johnson from Raleigh. Floyd Patterson, boxer from Waco. The legendary Richard Petty from Level Cross, North Carolina. U.S. President James K. Polk from Mecklenburg. And William Sidney Porter, author from Greensboro, are some of the famous North Carolinians here in the state. That covers some of the most famous people from the state. So, pretty cool stuff. So yeah, I can't wait for this weekend. It'll be pretty exciting stuff this weekend. I'm gonna go ahead and get going. here on this trip. So right around here is Salisbury. This here is little Salisbury, North Carolina. Not far from Charlotte. So we're going to go ahead and talk about North Carolina's most populous city now, since we're around this area, is the U.S. city of Charlotte. The most populous city in North Carolina, population 874,000 people, making it the 15th most populous city in the country and the 7th most populous city in the South. However, its metro area is around 2.8 million, making it the 22nd largest in the country. And it's one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas between 2004 to 2014 with over 880,000 residents. And residents are known as Charlotteians. It's the corporate headquarters for quite a few businesses, mainly Bank of America, Honeywell, Truist Financial, and Wells Fargo. As a result, it's the second largest banking center in the country after New York City. It's also home to many other attractions like the 3 professional sports teams, the NASCAR Hall of Fame, Charlotte Symphony, the Mint Museum, the Billy Graham Library, the Levine Museum of the New South, and Carowinds Amusement Park. And Charlotte is also known as the Queen City, because it was named after the city's namesake, Charlotte of Mecklenburg, the Queen of Great Britain and Ireland, and the wife of King George III, and was first settled in 1755. But the city really grew, though, during the 20th and 21st century, is where Charlotte really grew. Especially under the leadership of financier Hugh McColl, and helped build Charlotte to become a major banking city. So pretty cool stuff here. Charlotte's definitely a neat city, and it's definitely really cool to visit. And of course, our final stop, though, is going to be... I forgot to talk about Charlotte. Here it is, Charlotte. Most populous city in North Carolina, 15th most populous city in the country. Here's the major attractions here. And finally, for our final stop, is going to be at Charlotte Douglas International Airport, the busiest airport in the state, and it's actually one of America's busiest airports. Gorgeous hub of American Airlines. On this past year, 58 million people flew out of Charlotte International, which is a lot. And like I said, this airport has grown immensely since 2000. In fact, it's more than doubled its passenger routes since 2000. At one point in 2000, it was 23 million, and now It's literally shattered a whole new record of 58 million people. That's a lot of people. 58 million. And United flies from this airport to all sorts of destinations, including destinations in the U.S. like Atlanta, Baltimore, Austin, Boston, Chicago, New York, Dallas, Denver, Los Angeles, to international destinations such as Athens, Dublin, Vancouver, Toronto, Provinciales, London, Paris, and a lot more. They fly to all sorts of places. Also, Lufthansa goes to Munich. Well, United does flights to Munich from to Charlotte and more, but it is a massive hub for American Airlines. It's their second biggest hub after Dallas. Their second biggest hub. Pretty important stuff, and I've been to Charlotte a few times. Definitely a pretty cool airport to visit is Charlotte. Now, one of my only issues with Charlotte is that the city itself has no photogrammetry for some reason, which is weird. If they can get the Research Triangle area photogrammetry in Greensboro, Winston-Salem, why couldn't Charlotte get photogrammetry? That along with Dallas are the two big snubs for not having photogrammetry. So that's it, everyone. That's the notes for today's stream. That's well, let's go ahead and do some flying here. So here's Charlotte Motor Speedway. Here's the Motor Speedway here in Charlotte. That's for NASCAR. Here's Charlotte Motor Speedway. Here we go, guys. Yep, here's Charlotte. Yeah, this city's grown a lot since. Yeah, I got me a daily flight that I gotta do today. Later. Yeah, I don't know why Charlotte doesn't have photogrammetry. It doesn't make any sense. Here's Charlotte. Don't know why it has no program. That makes no sense. Charlotte would definitely be a city I thought that would be top of the priority for photogrammetry. It's a little expensive. There's the sporting venue, Bank of America Stadium, home of the Panthers. There's also Truist Field, home of the Charlotte Knights baseball team. And we're about to ride into Charlotte Douglas. Big old Charlotte. We'll stop right here. So that is going to be of today's stream. And shut down. We are officially done with today's stream. We're here at Charlotte Douglas International Airport in Charlotte, North Carolina. But guys, thank you all so much for coming here today. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. I know it's pretty crazy. I hope you guys enjoyed our trip to the North Carolina. So we'll officially be back on Wednesday. We'll see you in Rhode Island, the last of the 13 colonies. So take care, everyone, and have a great rest of your Friday, and have a great start to your weekend. you all soon. Take care, everyone, and have a great day. Goodbye.